Hi, welcome to my channel guys. This is the fourth part of Marvel God of Blood. If you like this video, please like and subscribe and comment down below. The author's website will be in the description. Chapter 4, Ritual. In the Blade movie, Deacon Frost leads a group of vampires to easily capture the president of the Vampire Council, Gaudino, and then use the traditional vampire sunbath to reduce him to ashes. After that, Deacon Frost threatened the Parliament with two fangs of Gaudino. The 12 elders who had been arrogant before confessed on the spot, surrendered in an all-round way, and were finally turned into a sacrifice by Deacon. The whole process is as simple as playing a house. When I was watching the movie, Bert complained about it. This pure-blood vampire is too useless, right? And this rant, Bert said it again in reality, because the process is the same as in the movie. In just a few days, Deacon has controlled the entire North American Vampire Council, only North America. The Vampire Council is divided into regions, and there is no unity. It's too simple, isn't it? Is pure blood so useless? Bert couldn't help but ask his captain, the former cowboy boss, that when Gaudino was arrested because he was a newcomer, he could only follow him outside, so he didn't know what happened inside. You're young, aren't you? Cowboy owner James said. Actually, everyone can't stand the Vampire Council for a long time. We are vampires, the top of the food chain. Why should we obey the rules of human beings? The people I am talking about are not only mixed blood vampires but also many pure bloods. Bert asked. You mean, someone in pure blood is helping Boss Deacon? James nodded affirmatively. Yes, even if you don't help, you will stand by and watch. This is the general trend, and the 12 elders knew this before surrendering. It seems that we vampires should be happy. Bert agreed, but he still had some doubts in his heart. Is it that simple? The speaker and the 12 elders should be a little loyal, but they have no resistance at all. Our good days are coming soon, James said with anticipation. Not only him but also other mixed races. They seemed to see a bright future calling them. Bert sneered at this. Vampires die when they see the light, dear. After successfully controlling the vampires, Deacon Frost began to deal with Blade, who had caused him a lot of trouble recently. He first led someone to raid Blade's lair, beat Blade's teacher and assistant Whistler seriously, bit him, which turned him into a vampire, and wait in the vampire mansion for Blade to come. Blade did not come to the door unexpectedly. The vampire prepared by Deacon Frost was not his opponent at all. He killed hundreds of vampires from the bottom of the building to the top of the building, but in the end, Blade was caught, because Deacon Frost had an ace in his hand. The mother of Blade. Blade always thought his mother was dead, but he didn't know that she was resurrected as a vampire and became Deacon's woman. And then, because he was too shocked, he was caught. After that, it was the highlight. Deacon Frost used the Daywalker blade and the blood of the 12 elders to summon the blood god on the altar to fuse with him so that he could become a blood god who was not afraid of sunlight, leading vampires and fighting the humans. This altar was prepared a long time ago. It is very tall and magnificent. The walls are covered with strange runes, which look very mysterious, and the ground is full of white jade, which looks very noble. After Deacon Frost cracked the holy code, he spent a lot of time refinishing the altar and installing a light source, so the altar looked bright. However, after all, it was the altar of vampires, a feeling of, as a glorious miscellaneous soldier. Bert was not qualified to enter the altar and could only guard outside. But he used an invincible method to easily infiltrate the interior of the altar, by bribing James. James explained, "Don't walk around. If I miss the big event of Boss Deacon, I can't keep you." Bert smiled and said, "Don't worry. I just went in to see it. That was the achievement of the blood god." That's good. James nodded first, and then asked a little tangled, "Speaking of which, after we succeed, will these dollar bills still be useful? Is this the beginning of a sweet dream?" Bert secretly complained. He said, "No, you can return it to me. Keep dreaming. Hurry up and patrol there. Don't stand," James immediately said with a straight face. Bert shrugged and patrolled with an automatic rifle. It only took one day for Bert to detect the terrain of the altar, and quietly transport it as props. Now, everything is only waiting for the ceremony the next day. The next night, near midnight, Deacon Frost locked Blade into the iron torture tool above the altar. The iron torture tool was full of spikes. Once closed, the blood of Blade accompanied by his misery and called into the prearranged ditch, and then down, filling the runes on the wall. "Let's start." Deacon Frost waved his hand excitedly. And the vampires immediately brought the 12 elders in and tied them to 12 pillars with special runes engraved on them. A black elder roared, "Deacon, the blood god is just a legend. You won't get anything." Only you idiots think that's a legend. Deacon looked disdainful. His decades-long dream was finally coming to an end. At that time, no one could restrain him, including the Blood family. At the same time, Bert came to the place where Blade was imprisoned. 3 people were guarding him, 2 well-armed vampires, and Blade's mother. When the heroine came to save people in the movie, no one seemed to be there. Why are there so many now? Wearing UV-blocking tights, carrying a bag, and wearing sunglasses, Bert took out a large UV lamp from the bag while complaining, "It's pity that Frank's colleagues failed to develop the UV grenade. Otherwise, the chances of winning this war would be better." Without wasting time, Bert pointed the ultraviolet light at a vampire at the door, turned it on, and a purple light shone on the vampire's face. The other vampire was startled, and hurriedly looked towards the place where the light came, but collided with the purple light head-on, and then, without any accident, he also turned gray. The female vampire inside was alarmed. She was about to shout when Wongbo pointed the off ultraviolet light at her and said, "Madam, don't shout out, or you will die." The female vampire Vanessa asked angrily, "Who are you to dare to be an enemy of Deacon?" "I am alone." Bert smiled and said, "Now, please let your son out." "I said you are too cruel, even to your son. I'm helping him. He's a vampire, not a human, and so are you." Vanessa shouted, "When Deacon becomes the blood god, I, him, and the 3 of us will be able to reunite as a family." Family reunion? Yes, in a sense. Deacon is Blade's stepfather. Bert didn't know how to complain, but Marvel likes to play with killing relatives. Star-Lord and Thor have all killed him. He said, "Stop talking nonsense," and quickly opened the torture tool. Although Vanessa is reluctant, she can only do it obediently. After all, Bert's ultraviolet light is too threatening, even at her speed. She may not be able to avoid it. Under Bert's gaze, Vanessa unlocked the torture tool, then opened the mechanism, and the wounded Blade fell to the ground weakly. Gasping for breath, his red eyes full of madness, like a bloodthirsty beast. This is blood addiction of Blade. Bert was already prepared. He threw a few blood bags in the bag and shouted, "Blade, hurry up and drink. There is still a tough battle to fight." Seeing the blood, Blade immediately jumped on it, biting open the package like a wild beast with its fangs and sucking wildly. Vanessa saw this and said, "You can't fight Deacon, and there is still time to surrender. That's our business. You don't have to worry about it." Bert smiled, and soon, Blade sucked 6 blood bags, and the food intake was quite amazing. And the wounds on his body healed at a speed visible to the naked eye as the blood was sucked in. His healing ability is better than that of elite vampires. Much stronger, the blood addiction was satisfied, and the madness in Blade's eyes gradually receded. He wiped the blood from his mouth, stood up, and asked Bert, "Who are you?" "I said, we will meet." Bert smiled slightly, took out a gun and a short knife from his bag, and threw them to Blade, saying, "I made this myself. The bullets and the short knife are all silver-plated. It's you." Blade recognized Bert. He caught the gun and the short knife, but looked at Bert's sunglasses. Bert complained, "Sure enough, the sunglasses are your body." UV rays. Blade was a little disappointed. He put the gun on his waist, threw the short knife twice, and said, "This knife is average. I'm going to grab my knife." Bert rolled his eyes and said, "You don't know how to speak. Why haven't you been beaten to death yet?" "Because the only person who can talk to me is a bad old man worse than me." Thinking of the bitten whistler, a trace of sadness flashed in Blade's eyes, but it immediately became firm. He took the knife, turned his head to look at Vanessa, and said in a low voice, "Mother." Vanessa panicked a little. She pleaded, "I'm your mother. You won't kill me, will you?" "I want to relieve your pain," Blade said sadly. He thinks so, and he intends to do it. "No, you can't do that." Vanessa turned and fled back. Blade immediately chased after him, and the 2 quickly fought. Although Vanessa is also an elite vampire, she has rarely fought, is not an opponent of Blade at all, and was quickly pressed against the wall by Blade's knife. Blade raised the short knife, and his eyes flashed a look of pain about killing his mother, but he immediately became determined. Bert couldn't stand it any longer, and said, "Blade, even if you stun her, this kind of thing, even if you want to do it, you shouldn't do it." Blade hesitated and knocked Vanessa out with the hilt. His heart was not that hard. Bert said, "Okay, now it's time to deal with Deacon Frost. If you want him to become a blood god, it will be troublesome." Blade placed Vanessa carefully, then turned to look at Bert, and asked, "What's your purpose?" "Of course, I have a purpose, but my purpose does not hinder you." Bert smiled. He walked over to Blade and handed over the UV light. saying, "This UV light can be changed from flashlight mode to bulb mode, which is very effective for those vampires." Blade took the ultraviolet light, looked at Bert, and said, "I know you want to use me. I don't care. Killing vampires is my responsibility, but if you become a vampire, I will kill you as well." Wong Bert solemnly assured, "I am a human by heart, and I will never be a vampire. It is good." Blade didn't talk nonsense, nodded coldly, and came to the window with the ultraviolet light. He looked at Deacon Frost and a group of vampires who were cheering below, changed the ultraviolet light to bulb mode, and then took the ultraviolet light in his left hand, take the gun in his right hand, and jump off the railing with both feet. "Deacon Frost!" Blade shouted and jumped down from the height of the 5-story building. The purple light suddenly filled the hall. More than a dozen ordinary vampires immediately let out shrill screams, and their bodies seemed to be splashed with sulfuric acid, and they quickly melted with smoke. Even the elite vampires and the 12 elders had melted traces on their faces, looking extremely miserable. "Blade, kill him and break the lamp," Deacon roared in shock and anger. The 4 elite vampires who could still move immediately took out their pistols and entered the pain to shoot upwards. As for ordinary vampires, there is no way to shoot at this time. They are already dying, although the 4 vampires shot. Because of the existence of purple light, they could not aim at all. Blade fell to the ground unscathed, rolled around, and stopped. Then, Blade threw the ultraviolet light up, raised the gun, and shot at Deacon. Deacon and the others immediately hugged their heads and ran away, embarrassed. One of them was shot in the calf, and a hole appeared directly. At this time, those ordinary vampires were annihilated by the purple light, and the rifles on their bodies fell to the ground with a crackle. Blade rolled to dodge and shot at an elite vampire with a gun. The elite vampire was shot in the unfortunate heart, screaming and turning into ashes and disappearing. "Damn! Turn off the lights first." Deacon hid behind a pillar and shouted. The pure blood vampire Mercury, who was following him, immediately raised his hand and shot and shattered the falling ultraviolet light. Without the light, all the vampires were relieved and did not have to be hurt all the time, "Deacon, the 12 elders are injured and cannot fight here, otherwise they may be killed by stray bullets." Mercury fired 2 shots at Blade, turned back, and shouted to Deacon, who gritted his teeth and said, "Get out of here. Call other people in, and destroy Blade together." "Yes." The few remaining vampires immediately protected Deacon and fled, and Blade naturally chased after him. This time, the altar was empty, and only 12 injured vampire elders remained. "It's easier than I thought." Bert jumped down from the 5th floor one by one. When the 12 injured elders saw someone coming, they hurriedly said, "Save us, we can give you anything you want." Bert didn't pay any attention to these elders who were offering sacrifices. He stood in the middle of the altar and looked up at the ceiling. There seems to be lightning coming down next. Bert was thinking about it, and at this moment, several vampires suddenly rushed in from the side. Thank you guys for listening. I hope you guys enjoyed. Please like and subscribe and comment down below if you would like the next part.